Hi friends, welcome back to the channel.
Hello.
Today I have invited Sinhai to join the discussions. So the reason I asked him for interview because I watched his recent video talking about options. At first I thought it's just like options, talking about like put options that you sold, right? And then suddenly you mentioned something that actually caught my attention, which is that you suddenly talk about time dilation and so on. I just want to ask some physics related questions first. So in your video you mentioned that time is not an absolute unit of measurement. So I just want to ask you in details, actually what do you mean by that?
When I say time is not an absolute unit of measurement, what I mean is that usually for us normal human beings, we quantify everything in time. We use time as an absolute unit of measurement, means we quantify time in that as if it's like 1 liter is 1 liter, 1 kg is 1 kg, as if it's like a fixed unit. But actually time is relative. Means that time can be warped by gravitational field or time can be warped by motion. So I think that fascinates me about time itself, and options is a contract dealing with the passage of time. So when I'm fascinated with time, I do both sides. I study both sides of the time itself and options, but not because it has relation or what. It just gives me a deeper curiosity for me to deep dive into both of the things, and the curiosity makes me understand better about both sides. Yeah.
Okay, just now raining, so we have to run, find another spot. This is the thing about outdoor shooting. The moment you start for 10 seconds, then sky start raining. So let's come back to the shows. So just now you mentioned that time is not absolute unit of measurement, right? I think all this topic is related to special theory of relativity and Einstein's theory, right? So can you explain what's your understanding on what is special theory of relativity and what is space-time?
If you study the theory of relativity, you can understand that time can be distorted by motion and gravity. If an object is going faster than the speed of light, time can be distorted. Yeah. Or if an object is very heavy, and space-time will be warped, and light can actually be bent and take the shortest distance, and hence distance is affected. And since speed of light is 299,792,458, time is affected because of the distance it takes to travel. Yeah. So time is relative, or time is not a finite absolute unit of measurement. Yeah. So I find it interesting, and because of my obsession with time, and options is a contract dealing with the passage of time. So it gets me fascinated to study about both time and options. It helps me to deep dive a little more. Yeah.
So you are saying that time dilations, right? It means that time is slowing down. So for example, there are two people's relative to each other, they experience it time differently because of their speed and so on, right? Is this really, do you think this is true, or is this just people's imagination?
On Earth itself, we are experiencing time almost equally. Maybe your head age faster than your legs, but that's about it. But I'm talking about outside Earth, when you are dealing with different velocity, different weight. Yeah, let's say black hole. Yeah, black hole. Time slows in black hole. The Earth's mass is different from Mars' mass or something like this kind of thing. Then time will move slightly differently depending on the actual difference between the motion and the weight. Yeah.
How do you stumble upon, all these concepts?
Actually, it starts with because I am more of a big picture person. So I think about there's one paradox called the Fermi paradox. Fermi paradox is basically asking where are the aliens, So if we know that the universe existed for about 13 billion years, 13.8 billion if I'm not wrong, and Earth is about 4.5 billion, then shouldn't there be aliens everywhere out there? But there are no aliens out there. So both scenario is equally terrifying. If let's say there are far more advanced civilization out there that is able to harness energy massively, and so they can just destroy us should they want to, So, and that is terrifying. But if there is no other alien forms out there outside of Earth or outside of this solar system, then it's actually more terrifying. Means that life itself is very precious, and conscientious and consciousness is very hard to be formed. And it means that there are a lot of great filters around to prevent life from happening. Yeah. So, and from Fermi paradox, you can ask a lot of other things. Do we feel time differently than outside space-time? Outside space-time. So means that our 4.5 billion years, does it mean that we experience it time differently than the outside the 13.8 billion years? So these are the questions I ask myself. And that's why I stumbled onto like, time can be relative and there's time dilation, this kind of thing. It also, for Fermi paradox, I also can ask like, what is consciousness, what is time, how this universe come about, whether or not is it a creator universe or things evolve from simplicity to complexity, which you talk about like entropy, all this kind of thing.
But before that, I just want to ask, do you think alien exists?
I mean, the logical answer should be yes. Okay, let's say the universe has the amount of sands Earth has. Sand is just like one Earth. Yeah. So, and if the universe is so big and there are multiple suns and all that, for life to exist, probably need like the right distance from the sun, right gravitational field, and right atmosphere. So, if the universe is so big that we cannot imagine, I think there are odds that alien life will exist. But alien life exists doesn't mean that consciousness and conscientiousness will be there. Because for 65 million years, that the dinosaur era or something like that, like there is no consciousness.
Just now you mentioned about this word entropy, right? So I also, when I read some text, I also read about this word, but then I don't know exactly what's the meaning. I have to look up the dictionary. But in your understandings, right, what is this entropy all about, and how does it help us to understand the universe?
Okay, I'm not a physics student, but just curious, just like Boon, curious. So I use some sort of analogy, reasoning from analogy. I just like picture, I feel like this is a high probable explanation of how things evolve. So entropy is taken from law of thermodynamics. Let's say a hot cup of tea introduced to a cold environment, then the particles will cool down, all this kind of thing, they'll interact with one another. Particles in hot state and particles in cold state is different, how they interact with each other. So you can think of it as like, let's say if universe starts from Big Bang, so from a smaller point of like this amount of space, all the energy is inside, and there is is it a heat wave or outburst, then things burst into Big Bang, right? For the particles to stay in the same state without moving around is lower probability than moving out, So it's higher probability that things will move out. You weigh things in terms of probability. Let's say in this time, in this segment of time, 80% or 90% things will move out this way. And then through the passage of time, then this probability, 90% probability will happen, and particles will go around, and all these particles will interact with one another and they will form more complex things. Atoms will combine and they will form more complex things. So I think this theory makes more sense than a creator universe, because if there's a creator universe, I mean there's a start of one thing, right? Then where does the creator come from? Then you have this like multiple loop that you cannot.
Yes, you always ask.
So entropy is also like a bit of like understanding things are chaotic. The flow of time is from order to disorder. I feel that this is our natural universe, this chaos, and things will become more and more complicated. And then just now we talk about this analogy, how about like humans in the 1900s, they will view us as gods because we have access to information, because like we have satellites that launch internet connection to everywhere. We have rockets, we have so many advanced technology. Like people in the 19th century will view people in the 21st century as gods. We discover new things, and these new things can stack on top of each other and they will form new things. Like understand physics and then understand this engineering, understand how to harness this energy, and all this combined will sprout to new things. And you can think of how particles, all this will interact with one another, and just my thinking.
So, okay, just to build on that, right, you are saying that all these new inventions help us do more new things, right?
Yes.
Can we describe this as the world become more chaotic or
yes.
no?
So I feel that this is a natural flow of time, which is things become more and more chaotic and become more and more complex. And this is just, I don't know why time flows this way and not to the order. But this is, you can connect everything in terms of like entropy, how time flows, time dilation. What we talk about is like aliens, Fermi paradox, or maybe not Fermi paradox, but some other stuff consciousness, how consciousness is developed and slowly becoming more and more sophisticated. Something like that.
So all this really sounds fascinating. So I know that, for example, like Einstein theory of relativity, it was invented in 1905, right? And then I think in the beginning it's just theory, and then now I think they already put into some applications. So just want to ask you, right? Whoever interested with this kind of topics, right? Do you think this is just like, okay, just for fun, just for the understanding, or do you think that that's real impact to the real life, or implications to the real life? What's your take on that?
My take on that is that physics is like the study of truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nothing can be built without physics, the understanding of physics. So your skyscraper, your pipelines, your whatever lah, you want to launch satellites, you need rocket. You need to understand a lot of things about physics. And what we are talking about is big picture physics. So it's understanding of the world. So a lot of things is based on logic. I mean, I reason a lot of things based on logic, but I may not fully studied physics, but it's still a lot of reasoning from logic. And I think in physics there's this thing called first principles approach. And we talk about this a lot. It's about reasoning the assumptions to their fundamental basic truth, and then you work backwards. So it's a good way to understand things if you do not have a mentor figure. Yeah. And because you use a lot of logic in physics, right, you will come to realize that what are narratives? Like what some stuff are narratives, means are stories we tell ourselves, but it's not the truth. So we can talk about this in terms of like money is a narrative, Bitcoin is a narrative,
Yeah.
religion is a
Yes. Definitely yes.
and then so many other things. Then when you understand, for me if I understand that things are narratives, I take it quite literal. Let's say you understand that money is a narrative. Money is printed by central entity, the government, the MAS, they work together to control and issue money by controlling interest rates, so on and so forth. Then you understand that like it doesn't matter one. The only thing that matters is time. Time is your finite resource, and then it's a narrative I adopt. I create my own new narrative. It's like time is the finite resource. Then what do you want to do with it? Do you want to? And it's completely up to you. You know, like your time is fixed, and whether or not you want to understand the universe, or whether or not you want to do certain form of contribution, or whether or not you just want to chill, it's completely up to you. Yeah. So this is how So this is the implication to real life. Like first principles approach, logic. Understanding what is narrative and what is truth, what is the absolute truth, so on and so forth. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and because when you reason from logic, you are less emotional in investing, in that sense. Yeah, it helps you to reduce your emotional volatility. Like then because you have good evidence to back up why you do certain things. So then you weigh things in terms of probability. Yeah, I think I do that a lot, and I think a lot of very successful people, they are not very feeling based. They weigh things in terms of logic and probability. So I think that is one good thing about understanding physics and implicating it in real life.
Just now we briefly mentioned about consciousness. So I think this one is a bit abstract to me, because to me, right, consciousness is just like people's aware of their environment and themselves, right? So what's your definition, or what's your view on these things as consciousness? What is it, and how is it relevant to us?
Okay, so I think this question comes from one of my videos. I say I fathom about a lot of things, and time and consciousness is something that is very hard for me to understand. So I will just derive what I think of consciousness lah. For me, consciousness is like we can do comparison between us and animals. Let's say if we really come from apes, right? Then what is the difference between us and that said mammal or other living things? So I think what they don't have in terms of, as compared to us, what they don't have is the ability to imagine time, the concept of tomorrow, the concept of the past. So and the ability to think. I think the ability to think is consciousness. So let's say if you are able to understand present, past, future, you can imagine things. You can imagine languages, you can imagine, and your brain will sort of like there's sort of like intelligence explosion. You can like come up with narratives, you can create religion, you can tell stories, you can tell a person to meet at a time, specific time, place, date, so on and so forth. I think this is one of the hardest questions, and just now we talk about it, like a study of artificial intelligence will let us better understand how consciousness are developed. Because when we are conscious, then we will be the one like seeking for deeper meaning. But I don't think animals, they will seek for deeper meaning.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's part of like the Maslow hierarchies of needs. So yeah.
What about artificial intelligence? Do you think that robots, right, when they are operating at, let's say, 5-10 years out, right, do you think that they will gain this kind of like consciousness, or you will classify this as not the thing?
I think different form of consciousness without empathy, and that is quite scary.
But empathy also can be developed, right?
I think that animals have empathy. You know, you look at
Okay.
animals, they have feelings, they can cry, they can what. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that is empathy, but it's more feeling based. Yeah.
But at
But
least
if you read a book called Super Intelligence, you'll realize how dangerous AI is. Yeah.
Can you give some example, like what will be the, you know, like the bad scenarios? Let's say if these things goes like there's some accident.
Avengers, Age of Ultron, or like nuclear, like they can take over a lot of things. Like if they deem that humans are not progressive enough, you know, then they become dumber and dumber. Like we can invent a thing that invents things, and we will just the things that invent things they'll keep inventing better and better and better, and we'll just be like so far behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called intelligence explosion.
Yeah.
Explosion is literally. So I go and read a book, Super
Yeah.
Intelligence.
Super intelligence.
By Nick Bostrom, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because our hardware is not upgraded, right? You know, the same hardware as in like 100, 200, 500 years ago, right? For machines, they are keep upgrading themselves.
Yeah, we just think of like us having a limited brain on the biological meat. I think it's all computing power, able to compute, and they don't have to eat, don't have to shit, all this, don't have to have love. It's different. It's different.
But are you optimist when it comes to like visualizing the future?
If you're not optimistic by nature, then I think there's like no point in living. Yeah, so I'm an optimistic nihilist.
That's good. That's good. All right, I think that's on the physics part. Let's try bring it back to the investment, right? So actually, based on what you are seeing market, right? You know, like just last week, there's all this talk about like hiking interest rate again, and the market has a huge drop, right? So what was your take? What's your outlook when it comes to market and your option strategy?
Okay, so I just be clear. It's not 3 sell put. It's 2 sell put and 1 sell call.
Okay.
Okay, and I just be honest and tell you all the truth, because I now have an intern in inventory, right?
Yeah.
So I was teaching him about options. Then he opened a position. So I asked him to close it, and he didn't close it. So after there was losses,
Yeah.
then I feel bad. So I was like, okay lah, because my portfolio size is big, like if I open and close a contract, it's easy to cover its loss.
Yeah.
So I go and sell call on my Tesla stocks. Yeah, so my shares get caught away. So after that, but it's okay because I feel that now I have the time to recover back. So it's not that big of a deal. So when I sell call, my share get caught away, I get back cash. So I got more cash to sell put. So yeah, I can sell. Usually I sell 1 put option, but now it's like I get a cash back.
Yep.
So I sell another put. So I have 2 put option. And 1 put option is 830, 1 is 780, and the other, so 2 put option at this pricing, and 1 sell call at this pricing. So the sell call is more like half covered call because I still have some shares left. Yeah. So and then I'm thinking like if Tesla stock price go down, let's say if it goes down, I will take full profit from selling call.
Yep.
If it goes up, I will take 2 profit from selling put.
Yep.
And if trades in the range, right, then I trades in the range between 830 and 870, I will take full profit from all 3 positions. So that's how I think about things. So yeah.
When we talk about options, it's always a short-term kind of outlook,
yes,
right?
yeah.
So what was your outlook like? Do you think that the market will go up or down or sideways?
This one we talked about before, like how I always reason logically, and we talk about like really what is the fundamental truth to Tesla's revenue is that Tesla revenue derived from car and cars only.
Yep.
Right? Mostly cars. The energy segment is very little. All the TAS, transport as a service, is still very little. Mostly cars. So in manufacturing, we talk about cars is a fixed cost business.
Yep.
So fundamentally, like okay, I'll ask myself, can Tesla produce a lot more cars going forward? Because every additional unit of revenue generated, expenses will not follow the same, and hence profit margin will widen or decrease based on the amount of cars they produce.
Yes.
So from that reasoning and understanding if the cost of raw material will go up and go down, and I look at Elon Musk, his recent interview, with another podcast, and he was saying that he feels that like he's the one closest to the supply chain, like all the raw materials, all this. He understands all this. So he's saying that like things are cooling down, and he foresees a prolonged mild recession. So if a prolonged mild recession, then there is not so much need to destroy demand through rising interest rates. Yeah. So yes, QT all this is dangerous, but because I have the cash to sell put and I will get back the shares at my original price anyways. So that's why I did what I did, but yeah.
What you just described is like a longer term outlook.
Yeah,
you are totally bullish, right? I think that's long term.
Yes.
But let's say over the short term, say we have some macro fears and then talk about inflation, talk about recessions, right? And let's say the share price on a short term basis it dropped a lot. What will you do with your options? Basically, you will take ownership of the shares, right? Okay. And what's your plan moving forward if that happens?
Okay. So I am extremely bullish on the company, but I'm very bearish on the short term.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about, I cannot say what I'm going to do, but there's a general plan. It's, if things go super underpriced, I'm building up cash flow I want to buy leaps, and it's about controlling the usage of capital.
Yep.
And that time I think one of our Tesla community guy, he's I think DXW or something. Yeah. He schooled me on something like the how to be efficient with the use of capital. Like it's about understanding Vega instead of the Theta DK.
Yep.
So I think I take note of that. So I'm like, okay, I plan to control my capital well, as in like control don't waste dead capital on like leaps. So like the leverage ratio must be correct, and then like calculate. It's quite, I mean, it's all this is in theory, then you have to put into practice. So the general plan is like if Tesla crash to a point that I feel is super undervalued, I will buy dips. If not, I will feel that like, okay, this recession has time, and so long as I'm not leveraging, right? Then selling put, selling call doesn't really matter that much because I can play with the sideways movement. Yes, something like that. So long as you don't leverage, then I think you'll be fine. Because now I have cash, I have to go back into the market and sell to get back my shares. I might do long-term sell put. So let's say if I have a lot of cash on hand, instead of doing a $800, $900 put, right, I can do a $1,500. I mean, wait, I'm a pre-split. Wait, post-split. Let's say $300 now, right?
Yes.
$300 post-split, right? I can do a $500 sell put long term. Then you can do not just one contract but two contracts. Even though delta is like 0.8, 0.9, but you get more exposure to like the same amount of cash, get more exposure. Like, instead of just outright owning 100 shares, I got exposure to 200 shares. Get more exposure with the same amount of capital. So that is what I may do. Selling put on a long-term basis, but with capturing the upside also.
But this one you will only do when, let's say, there's real fear in the market and then the price has dropped significantly. That's when you do it, right? And what kind of price level that you would think that this is the level?
I think 180 to 220 post-split. I think that is a good price for me to start doing all that. The dilemma is macro is shitty, but Tesla is growing very fast. I am net bearish because of sentiments, Company is doing well and then things are going well, and then people are willing to overpay for things, likely to overpay for things. The probability of things, they are likely to overpay. But let's say things are bearish and the company is performing well, but they are still affected by macro. Let's say supply chain problem, development, recession, then you need to cut, then you slow down progress of things. Then plus the sentiments is bearish. Then the probability of things being underpriced is higher than things being overpriced. So my option strategy is dealing with that.
Do you think that, let's say, over 1 year period, would there be a recession that is really hard enough such that the demand for Tesla cars also affected? Meaning that even though they are able to produce, let's say, like 2 million cars, but they're not able to sell it.
Exactly, that's the point I'm talking about. The company is doing well, but the macro situation is shitty, and all these things will affect. Recession, you slow down hiring, means you slow down FSD progression. There is lesser money circulating, there will be lesser demand, all this kind of thing. But then it's like, then you have to understand, like, try to predict the impact of how big is it, how small is it. That's why I'm more towards the bearish side. And that's why my option strategy is revolving towards more bearish and trying to farm time decay. And now, you asked me about like what news development, all this, right? I really like to the point that like, I think all this not so important. It's about cash flow. Yeah, so I'm focusing on building up cash flow to buy the dips.
Okay, I think that's all for today's interview. Thank you so much for coming. So hope that we will do this more often in the future.
Sure.
All right, thank you so much. See you.
See you, bye-bye.
Bye.